Welcome to the Polk Pioneer Oral History Program, a collaboration between the Polk County Historical Association's Heritage Partners, the Polk County History Center, and Polk Government TV. I'm Jennifer Bush, and I'm a board member of the Polk County Historical Association. I want to thank you for joining us today as I have the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Richard Howell, who has been nominated for Polk Pioneer recognition by the Lake Wales History Museum. First of all, let me say, Mr. Howell, congratulations. Not only are you the Polk Pioneer, but you were nominated and received the honor of being the Lake Wales Pioneer of the Year. So we just want to thank you for joining and sharing some of your life stories today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, I know you were born in Lake Wales
Born in Lake Wales.
1947?
1947. That's correct.
And you grew up there.
Lived the first 18 years of my life there, 19 years. Yes.
But what I want to start with, though, I want to go back in your history. I know you had extended family here in the area, but how did your family even come to Florida? How did you end up in Lake Wales?
Sure. That's good. I ended up in Lake Wales as a result of my grandparents, the real pioneers, coming to Central Florida in 1921. My grandfather and grandmother were involved in sharecropping cotton in southern Alabama. And of course, from probably 1915 to 1920, the boll weevil destroyed the cotton crops. And so he and his three brothers were in that together, and three of them left at that point. One of the oldest brothers stayed there and continued trying to make a living. And my grandfather with his other two brothers left. They stayed in the Alabama area. But my grandmother, we called her Granny, had relatives who came down earlier and settled in the Plant City area. And so grandfather and grandmother decided that they would come to Central Florida, and they went back and forth between Plant City and Lakeland a little bit, but finally they settled into Babson Park, just south of Lake Wales. Let me tell you a quick story about how they got here. In two Model Ts, 12 of them and all of their possessions drove for, I've heard different versions, anywhere from 5 days to 2 weeks to get from southern Alabama to Central Florida. And they'd drive for a few miles and fix a tire, and drive for a few more miles and look for water for the radiator. But if you can imagine that 12 people in two old Model Ts, and they would not have been new, you can bank on that, made their way to Central Florida. Now that's pioneer spirit. That's
true pioneer. And I mean, you can imagine the roads that they were having to travel in those old cars.
That's the thing. So it took them a week or more to drive what we can drive today in about 7 hours. Yeah. So anyway, they settled in 1921 in Babson Park. Got involved with citrus and picking fruit, working in the packing house and that kind of thing, and made a life for themselves and the rest of us to come.
Now, I know you're that's your grandparents, right?
That's right.
I want to ask you about is it your great-grandmother?
Oh, yeah.
Somebody in your family has a very unusual name. I got to find out the story about that.
Well, on my grandmother's side, her mother was Arkansas, Missouri Sweat. Arkansas, Missouri Sweat. And they called her Annie, and some people called her Kansas. But she was about 90 pounds from the pictures and what I've heard of her, and was a real fireball of a person. So, Arkansas, Missouri.
I love it. Well, and I guess some of that fireball spirit is really what helped the generations to come to make that trip and really start over again in the face of adversity with the devastation of the boll weevil. So your family came to Babson Park. That's your grandparents, right?
My grandparents.
Okay, so take us a little bit forward with the history after that with your parents.
Well, my father was born in 1915, so he was 6 years old when they came. He served in World War II, came home. He and my mother were married just before he went to France. And they raised my older brother, who was born in 44, myself in 47, and my younger brother, who was born in 52. And we were all raised right there in Lake Wales. We went to a little play school called Harris Happy Hours. Both my mother and father worked, and we went to Harris Happy Hours. That was the beginning of our friendships with lots of people, and on through the public schools.
You said it was called Harris Happy Hours.
Harris Happy Hours.
Was that like it was like a kindergarten or a preschool?
Well, we didn't have kindergarten, at that time. We didn't have kindergarten in the schools. So, yeah, we called it kindergarten, but basically it was a play school and, daycare. We were taught the ABCs and things like that, so I'd say yes to answer that. Went first grade at Polk Avenue, and then Hillcrest was built in 1954, and so did an elementary school at Hillcrest, Lake Wales Junior High School, Lake Wales Senior High School. Proud of it. Proud graduate of 1965.
What are some of your earliest memories of school, your friends in school?
Oh, heavens. Hillcrest, always best. Hillcrest meets each test, so traditions we'll uphold to keep our honor bold. And virtually all of my close friendships, with the exception of a few, were born in Lake Wales. And it remains that way today, even though we're seem to be losing a lot of them at this age. But the one thing I can remember, everybody in Polk County knows of Publix. And Publix was new in Lake Wales. One of the first few stores, I think the fourth or fifth store, was in Lake Wales. And there were arrows in the parking lot directing traffic. So I remember a story that really describes my older brother, who was a really good man. Real early on, it would have been about 1956. I'm going to say he was 12. He was born in 44, so I would say about 1956. And my mother, myself, and two brothers were in the car, and she's driving the wrong way in the lane, and a lady yells out at her, "Lady, can't you see the arrows?" And without hesitation, my brother said, "Lady, we ain't even seen the Indians yet." That kind of describes his personality.
Another feisty spirit, right?
Yeah.
That was another feisty family spirit.
So we just had all kinds of things. We played together, went to church together, played youth sports together, swam at the pavilion together. Lots and lots of great memories with all of those folks.
Yeah. So, what? Anything specific about what the kids particularly did for fun?
Oh, well, we played sports. I mean, all the guys played sports, and the girls supported us. The girls played tennis and things like that. In the summers, we'd be down at the pavilion swimming and go across the street and play tennis and go ballpark and play baseball. And that's what we did. That's what we did. I spent my life, and really my life has been in athletics, and it started there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's where you developed the love and the passion for it, because there was so much camaraderie and fellowship involved with it.
Right.
Yeah. Now, you were saying earlier that when you went to the happy hours, your mom and dad both worked.
Yes.
Right. Tell me about what they did.
So my dad worked for an auto parts store, and my mother worked at Highland Park Club. It was a resort started by the Quakers back in the 20s and was south of town. And she was the housekeeper there for over 40 years. She worked there.
I think one of our other pioneers had some history with the Highland Park Club, talking about folks sitting out there and just telling all kind of great stories. Yeah.
I can tell you, as children, we didn't irrigate anything around here in the 50s. And, yards were a mess, and that was just the way it was. That's the way we lived. And when you would turn into the entrance going into Highland Park, you thought you'd gone to heaven with all the azaleas and green grass and all of that. It was a beautiful place. And that may be what he or she was talking about.
What would you say were some of maybe the most important things that your mom and dad taught you growing up?
They were just really good parents.
You had a close family. You had a close, loving family.
Very much so.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about your two brothers, one older, one younger.
Mm-hmm.
Any other memories with your brothers when y'all were younger?
Oh, trips, vacations mother was from Pennsylvania, so we made a lot of trips back and forth to Pennsylvania. Drove some, rode the train some. Those kinds of things, and playing sports. We played together on some teams together, and that was our upbringing.
Yeah. Well, it was good because you were close enough in age that you really could do a lot of things together, and Yeah.
Yes.
And the neighborhood you grew up in?
Well, the neighborhood was just down from the hospital. People called it Up on the Hill. That's there was a area that was developed that was a mile and a half from downtown, and people say, "Oh, you live out on the hill down from the hospital." I tell people that I was born in the Lake Wales Hospital. I grew up for the first 18 years of my life 3 houses down from the hospital. And today I live 2 blocks on the other side of the hospital for the last 35 years. So I know a lot about that area.
When you graduated from high school,
mm-hmm.
That's when you got your first job? Is that?
Yes. When I graduated from high school, I got a job at it was actually called the State Road Department then, but the Department of Transportation here in Bartow, as a draftsman.
How'd you get the job?
Well, we had a link. There was a management person who lived in Lake Wales, and he suggested to several of us. There were about 4 or 5 of us in the same age group that worked there, and I had taken drafting in high school, and just fit right in. Worked very well with me. Worked there for the first 2 little bit more than 2 years and was drafted into the military. Didn't want to go. 20-year-old, footloose and fancy-free, and things were fun around here. But in the end, turned out to be 2 really important years of my life. My brother was in Vietnam, so I was fortunate to serve in West Germany. I tell people I was the Radar O'Reilly. You watched MASH, right? I was the Radar O'Reilly of an ordnance company. The ordnance is ammunition. So we were at a training base, and we provided the ammunition for mostly for the artillery guys to do their training. And so I was about an hour and 30 minutes north of Munich, close to Regensburg, another nice city, big city, right on the Czech border. We were only about 35 kilometers from the Czech border. But we had a lot of time, a lot of good times in and around the base, and that was fun. It turned out to be a really good 2 years of my life, and happy that I was able to serve. My brother served in Vietnam, and I came home then, worked at the Department of Transportation again for a while, and then in 1972, decided to go to college. First time I stepped foot into a college, I was 24 years old. And the only reason really that I went to college was that I wanted to be a high school baseball coach.
Now that's
really
that's really a far cry from a draftsman, right?
Yeah. And at the time, you had to be a teacher to coach. And of course, to be a teacher, you had to have a degree. So I went to Polk Junior College, not community college, not state college, but Polk Junior College, that had just moved from the air base into Winter Haven, and enjoyed that. Played baseball there, and then went to the University of Florida to finish the degree. When I was finishing the degree, the dean of my college, the physical education department, said, "I got just the thing for you." And he set me up with a grad assistantship at Michigan State University. So, Florida boy, went to Michigan.
What was that like?
Cold. Very interesting, but it, again, was part of my life, and I'm proud of it. It was a fun day. It was a good day when I said goodbye to the Midwest in terms of the weather. But lots and lots of really nice people, we met there, and I did a master's degree at Michigan State and then stayed on there for 4 years and worked there in the department. Met a man who had the same interest as I did in children's sports. And he was a tenured professor at the University of Illinois. And so he wanted to start a publishing company in sports-related materials. Everything was sports-related. In the beginning, it was all academic stuff. He was a sports psychologist, a very early sports psychologist. And he didn't want to leave his tenured position at the university, but he wanted to start this business really to document the science that they were developing at that point in sports psychology. And so that's what we did. And I stayed there 10 years, and we developed that business into a very, very profitable, it's still in existence, called Human Kinetics Publishers, and has developed into a really, really great company. though, after being in Pennsylvania for a wedding in February and driving back through the snow and cold and ice and getting back into our neighborhood and not being able to get to our house because of the snow, I turned to my wife and said, "Sweetie, I think we're going to head back to Florida." So we did that. And in 1989, I was able to make a deal with a gentleman in Lake Wales who had started and built a business, a glass and mirror business called Ridge Glass, from 1958 to 1989. And I bought that business from him and had it until 2014. And fortunately, had some really, really great employees. A lady that worked in our office for over 25 years, maybe 30 years, and two men that worked on the production side. Allowed me to be busy working in civic matters through the 90s. And that's when I say I gave my life to the city of Lake Wales in the 90s. But it was a good business. We were able to sell it in 2014 to one of the young men I was talking about, and he's operating it successfully today. I'm proud of him.
So the legacy continues.
Started in 1958.
Now, you mentioned your wife. When did you, tell me about your wife. What's her name, and how did y'all meet?
Her name is Jean, and we met when I got back from the Army. She was raised in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, which is way down south, almost to the Maryland line in Pennsylvania. And along with her grandmother, I think was the one that was most impactful on the decision, was to come to Weber College in Babson Park. So at that time, it was a very small all-girls school. And she came there in 1968, fall of 1968. I got home from the military in August of 69. We met Easter weekend of 1970 on Daytona Beach, by the way. And we were married July of 1971.
Wow, that sounds like love at first sight. That was a short courtship.
Yeah. Well, April of 70 to July of 71. Yeah.
I mean, literally, you were on the beach and
we were on the beach. I was on my motorcycle, and I pulled up behind her. She was there with friends from the college, and I was there with friends from town, and pulled up, and she hopped on the back, and we rode off. and we've been together since 53 years now.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
We have 3 children. They've blessed us with 6 grandchildren, and it's been a good life.
Now, are your grandchildren pretty much local, or?
They're all within an hour and a half. Our oldest son lives in Bradenton. Our middle child, who is a son, lives in Riverview, and our baby girl, who now is not a baby girl anymore, lives in Brandon.
Now, did your wife work?
She worked. When our youngest got into middle school, she went back to work and became part of the librarian group at the middle school. And she worked in the library for over 20 years. She retired in 2014 as well.
Well, it sounds like you both have contributed so much to the Lake Wales community. What does Lake Wales mean to you? I know that's a simple question with a ton of answers, but tell me what
it's just home. That's all. So Pat Kane, good friend of mine, always said, "We grew up in Mayberry. What would you expect?" And we did. We did grow up in our version of Mayberry. We didn't have Opie and Aunt Bee and Andy, but we had our parents that took care of us and taught us right from wrong, and great friendships.
Great memories.
That remain today, as I mentioned before, with precious few exceptions, my lasting friendships were born, in the early years of Lake Wales.
Clearly your heart is in Lake Wales. your heart and your soul right here in Lake Wales.
Yeah, but, my life has been in sport. My life is, I've loved athletics for myself. I love being a part of development of children. I have very much enjoyed being a part of the high school and the things that they've done. I was the public address announcer for 27 years for football, baseball, and basketball. I did the roll call for graduation for 12 or 14 years. And I've just enjoyed that part of my life. 35-year Rotarian. I love the work we've done through Rotary. And helped develop the YMCA when it was there back in the early 90s. And just lots of things.
You're leaving many legacies. Yeah, you've clearly touched so many people. So many aspects of Lake Wales. It's the seed you've sown. It's got to be really so satisfying to see those seeds grow and.
Well, thank you. I was very fortunate to grow up in Lake Wales, but I'm not a pioneer there. I guess I am by the strictest definition, at least the way the museum in Lake Wales determines a pioneer to be there at least 50 years or more. So I qualify. But I think my grandparents were the pioneers. My grandparents were the ones that got us set up in a beautiful place, and I was able to raise my family there. My wife and I were just very happy there throughout the years we were raising them. And we were able to give back in a lot of different ways. And we're appreciative of that.
I think that was beautifully said. That was beautifully said because it's genuine and heartfelt. So you're thanking Lake Wales, and I know that Lake Wales is thanking you in return.
Well, thank you for this opportunity to get together today and get to know you a little bit and to share some of my thoughts about Lake Wales and pioneers.
I've loved hearing your life stories today. Thank you so much for joining. And again, I'll say congratulations. I guess that wraps up today's session of the Polk Pioneer Oral History Program. I hope you'll check out more of our videos of Polk Pioneers as we document these life stories in order to preserve and promote the wonderful history of Polk County. Thanks again.